Thank you. So for the record, Representative John Weber, District 34, and Representative Wendy Horman, District 30. And Roger, if you'd, let's go around and just introduce and who you represent.
Roger Christensen, Bonneville County.
Micah Austin, City of Ammon, and I'm the city administrator. Mayor Coletti wanted to be here today, but he could not. He's taking his son to California right now. So I'm pinch hitting today for Mayor Coletti.
Penny Manning, Bonneville County Clerk. I'm Kate Alexander. I work in the city of Idaho Falls, and I'm the Municipal Services Director representing Mayor Castro.
Super.
I'm Mark Agador, and I'm the City of Idaho Falls Controller.
Great, Mark. Thank you.
Kim Pierre, Madison County Clerk.
Excellent.
I missed your first name. Kim? Kim, thank you.
As Representative Horman and I have discussed briefly on House Bill 30 or 89, excuse me, House Bill 389, if I get this right, in the concerns coming from counties and cities across the state and the impact that this bill may or may not have on our local government. We also want to recognize that Representative Rod Furness is traveling, and he would have liked to have been with us today. And we have, yes, some VIPs.
Yeah. I'm mother of a VIP.
Very nice.
Sorry you're late.
And Abby Mace, clerk from Fremont County. Welcome. And this is
Shirley Hill,
Shirley Hill.
Madison County. Used to work in the clerk's office.
Awesome. So we call this meeting to gain understanding from cities and counties. This isn't a gripe session. We've already heard that, okay? But we do want to, a couple of things, let you know that we are here to listen and to learn and to see and hear what your thoughts are, how we can make recommendations to tweak this House bill that may be closer to a win-win. That's tough. We know that because of the demographics and everything that plays a part from size of cities and counties to our growth patterns and different things across the state makes it difficult. But let's, it's an open conversation. I really have no strict agenda as far as going through it. But we do want to try to keep this to an hour and maybe a little longer if we need to. But so let's be precise in our comments and not get too far off in the weeds. And Representative Horman, do you have anything to add?
No, I just am really grateful you all would take the time. There were some real mixed opinions on this bill, and some of us voted yes, some of us voted no, but all of us want to understand the impact and how we can improve it. We recognize that property taxes are becoming an increasing burden on citizens in our area, and my expertise is more in school space, and we know those are the largest amount levied in the state. And so even if you have ideas around school stuff, I've been batting around some ideas around supplementals myself. Even any thoughts into that space that you might have based on your experience in your locations would be helpful for me to hear.
Excellent. Let me reference right from the start a letter that was sent out by House leadership. In no way, shape, or form are we throwing these guys under the bus. But I will say the tone of this letter is not representative of by far the majority of the House.
They didn't send it out to us. I got it from Kelly Packer.
Exactly, and I got it secondhand also. I say that because we and majority of the legislators recognize the importance of working together. And the tone of the letter does not lend itself to that. And so please, when you read this, or if you reference it, we're not in that camp, okay? And that will, I'm sure, be addressed at some point in this next session, at least at some level. The second is, when we have an open, frank conversation, please don't take offense. We're not here to make anyone uncomfortable or offend anyone. We are here to get the facts out and things that we hear, concerns that we hear from legislators that kind of led to 389. And you do the same to us. You know, it's always been said, you choose to be offended, and we choose not to be there. So some of the things that I will lead out with is concern that there may be some cities or counties that have a substantial amount of reserve. And when our environment, when we're hearing from our citizens that, hey, our property tax is out of control, and they want the legislators to do something about it, recognizing that property tax really is a local issue in a lot of ways. I mean, you're collecting the tax, it doesn't come to the state, it stays locally, and it's budgeted off that, but yet they want us to write legislation that somehow would lower their taxes. And so now we get some of that. I say big reserves, and here we have the state of Idaho sitting on $900 million.
1.5.
1.5 billion.
And that's only our surplus. We have another billion in reserve.
So when you look at things, it's like, you know, the kettle black, right? And so again, I think you're going to see legislators look at how do we get that money back to the people. There was some work towards that with the income tax, lowering the rate and compressing the brackets, refunding that we've, I think, all received if you filed 2019 taxes returns. And you will see more of that. I'm pretty sure you'll. What else, Wendy? What are we hearing they're trying to solve?
I mean, I'm just interested in your perspective too on the homeowners exemption.
Sorry, I
And-
called you Wendy. Not
No,
represent.
no, no. I am Wendy.
More respectful.
No. I'm Wendy. I don't have much. I mean, I am interested in ideas around the homeowners exemption. If there are ideas, I mean, one of the reasons I voted no on the bill, frankly, was the impact on senior citizens. I have had family members impacted and actually have to move out of their homes over property taxes and meter watering, but you know, mostly property taxes. And so I'm very interested in ideas around that. We're hearing a lot of that exemption conversation coming from Democrats and some Republicans. But, you know, if it gets framed as a Democratic solution, chances of us moving something are more difficult. But if you could get enough Republicans on board with some ideas that you think might really help, whether that's indexing or I don't know, I literally don't know. I would be very interested in hearing any specific thoughts around the homeowners exemption.
Excellent. Roger.
Yeah, and then you suggested that we provided data-driven suggestions. So if I could start out, because I've got some graphs and charts that kind of show the history. I can put them up here, but I've given the hard copies. I didn't know if we're going to have many on Zoom. Just to go through and kind of show you.
Sure. I'm retired, so.
Okay, let me just kind of walk through these, give you some ideas because it touches on the history of the trends of what's been happening. Skip this one for now because that's one of the suggestions we might have is the replacement of some mandated services with sales tax. But addressing the letter that you got from leadership, this chart that you've got here shows it takes 4 major areas that we have in our county in different taxing districts, and kind of shows you because schools, like Representative Horman mentioned, are a big impact on property taxes. So when you take a slice out of the smaller portion and expect that's going to be all the relief, sometimes it doesn't give you the relief you want. And that might give you something to go have a discussion with those who authored that letter on. That it's not, I think the quote was, it's property taxes are driven solely by what counties and cities spend. But this gives, and this is this year's levy on the current levy, showing the city of Idaho Falls, District 91 county. Now there are a bunch of smaller districts. We didn't go in detail on those because they're variable. And that shows you the impact that each entity has. And so some of the solutions that would have on that, we went, because District 91 is also in the city of Idaho Falls. Ammon is District 93, but they have the fire district. And out in the county, they have District 93 without a city, but a fire district. And I think that's the second page. Ran out of room on those. But to talk about what you were talking about is this graph, this chart, share of market value by major category. And this shows the trends of what the percentages were on owner-occupied homes and where they're going. The non-owner occupied, and I'm guessing that's probably from apartments, things like that, that don't have the homeowner's exemption. The agriculture, and this is the share of what they pay in the property taxes. We don't have timber zone. We didn't have timber on this one, but the next page adds the non-owner occupied and the owner occupied together. So that's basically your residential. And you've seen from 2001 that share has gone from 58%, 57% to about 70%. The share of commercial has gone from about 28 to 23. Agriculture has gone from 7 down to 2.8. And of course, those who deal with counties know that the ag assessment value it's an exemption, and it's based on prices of crops. We're not suggesting that any of these are more important than the others. This just kind of shows what's been happening. This is 2019. It does not reflect the percentages based on the adjusted homeowner's exemption. So, that would have to be updated. I think Seth had his staff put this together because they'll be sharing this with the legislature, and they've done a good job.
So is this statewide then or Bonneville?
This is statewide.
Statewide.
That's where you have to look at your solution is statewide. Okay, the next 1% change in property taxes paid reflects the concern that you're talking about, is because the inflationary value of homes, and most of them are homeowners, from 2016, that's gone from 7.2 to 10.7. So that's been on the incline, and that's the increase in valuations. Don't know why, and the commercial, because commercial is assessed not necessarily on replacement value, but it's a combination of income. The problem on homes, especially for those who have rentals, is that's not taken into account. It's based, just on comparable sales. And then this is one that has timber, which we don't have. But agriculture, and that's done on a 5-year rolling average and is based on crop prices, expenses, things like that. I know they've suggested, one of the suggestions they've talked about is having a 5-year rolling average on homes. That'd be very difficult, talking to our assessor to take care of. Partly because you'd have to have some type of a software generated by the state. Our experience with the state tax commission has not been stellar, especially on House Bill 389 and trying to implement that. Penny's been going nuts on that. But that, and this shows the change in percent, the trends, and how that the percentage of property tax or homeowners is going up and some of the others are going down. That's just throwing that out there so that when you look at it, you can tell, because I know they talk about these shifts. And the thing with ag is you can't reasonably value ag at the market value, or you drive everything into development that puts farmers out of business. The ag exemption is a good one. It kind of helps preserve that ag base we've got. The others are subject to some type of an adjustment. The next thing we've got, and these are some thoughts on ways, you talk about the state surplus, and I can only speak for counties because counties have mandated services. And we've put this together as the association, and it gives the code section and the levying ability to help educate some of the other legislators on that. I've highlighted some of those which we've talked about for a lot of years of shifting, having the state pick up that mandate. One of them is district courts, because it's been about 4 or 5 years ago, we added a district judge. Along with that, the state pays the salary of the district judge, but then we have to pay for the clerks. We have to pay for all the other expenses, and we have to do that within the existing levy cap of that, which makes it difficult. Some of the things that could be looked at is using some of that excess surplus to replace those, with the idea that, if you're replacing the mandated services, you could take that out of the base. And then the state would pick that up. Public defense, they had our association meeting, I guess had a very robust discussion on the state picking that up. Problem with public defense is they get a block of money, and the discussion we had with them this year is that they only had enough money they had the choice of giving a cost of living adjustment or adding another attorney. They added another attorney. Well, when we take those attorneys that are paid for them, they get them in the door, then we have to give them the cost of living that we do the others, where you run into all kinds of legal problems. This year, and then the other problems, they don't send enough money to even be able to hire, because they've had positions open at the level that they send. But there, with those caseloads and everything, it is putting a big pressure on, and anything you could do in that area, if you could, replace it. I do have and I'll provide you a copy of the thumb drive, because it shows different analysis of revenues. For example, if the online sales tax had gone into the formula, Bonneville County would have pulled in about $460,000 more dollars. I don't know what it would have done to the cities or the other counties, but that would have increased our other than property tax revenue with that.
Hold that thought a second. So when you say go into the formula, you're talking the revenue sharing.
Revenue
formula.
sharing.
So right now it's 11.5% of sales tax. The Wayfair tax is not coming on until 2025.
Was it 20? I thought it was 26.
I thought it was 24.
I
but
thought 24 as well.
24.
Okay.
We
Well,
can
that's,
run a pool and find out.
because when you're talking the impacts of 389,
Yeah,
and we've also got a history of, the amount of percent of property taxes that the different entities have been able to collect, and property taxes have stayed fairly consistent of an increase of about 5% a year. The revenue sharing has gone up faster than that. So we're some of those who supported 389, even though it made it difficult. Because this year we were able in property taxes under that formula to pull a little over 5% new money from property taxes. But you've got a lot of pressures of these mandates that keep coming that we need to be able to cover. And, I think you're right, the state is collecting a lot of revenue in that revenue sharing. And if some of that could be used to target mandates, but going back to these charts, you're just picking at a small percentage of what happens. The other suggestion for some of that is to find ways to make sure the schools are funded and shift those away from property tax, replacing it with state dollars. And one thought, would be to kind of replace some of the property tax revenue for all entities with the state revenue sharing, and have an offset on that to be able to make sure there's enough of an increase. But the concern about that is then if you have a downturn in the economy, you need to find a way that those entities are held harmless in that type of a formula. The other, it is a frustration to us. Well, and the perfect example of this was Medicaid expansion. And there were those in the legislature who said counties are responsible, and you've heard this from the CAP board. They should have done away with indigency a long time ago. But instead of making it a property tax reducing thing, it was traded for funding health districts. And it was on a formula that treated some well like Ada County. I think they picked up a few $1 million. It cost us $300,000, which we had to replace.
It cost everybody in our district, Roger.
Yes.
I was
Our district
infuriated
was
over that whole
Oh.
deal.
Yeah, but we also know personalities that were driving that. But I think you'll hear from my IAC this year that the medical indigency should just be done. Not even have it on the books anymore. There are certain things that some counties still levy for, like the jails and things like that. Those could be incorporated into the rest of the levy. But if you could, that could go on for hours
Will
on
it just
that.
be the hospitals that are angry at that?
Hospitals are usually angry at anything we suggested from the catastrophic fund.
Okay.
Remember those years when we went from 35 million down to 10? And a lot of that was just by examining the bills and things like that.
We did a great job of it in this region, and then we're punished for it.
Yeah, but hospitals, and they haven't been able to show the studies, have probably done quite well with Medicaid expansion because they're getting more. But those are some policy, and then things like user fees. I know cities largely operate with hardly any of these mandated, but they also have enterprise and a lot of different fees that we don't have the ability. One thing that was helpful this year was the $5 increase on driver's license, and actually sent it straight to here, but that helped us hire one staff. And a lot of you are aware of the mess that driver's license and motor vehicles has been with the state doing that. Now we see an effort on the state motor vehicles to take the gravy and do all of that online and, leave the tough stuff. But that's just kind of an overview when you're talking about these shifts and things like that. homeowners exemption based on some of these charts probably needs to be indexed or adjusted. So does circuit breaker. Because the amount of the value and the amount of the taxes. I think the levies under House Bill 389 are dropping this year about 5%
That's what I see.
in our county. So it has had the effect of dropping the levy, but then the assessment kind of goes up in different categories, as you've seen on that. But the ability for the counties and other taxing entities to still be able to provide the services, that would be a good use of some of the surplus money is take care of that, because we feel for the elderly. We work very hard. I think I mentioned to you, we've not kicked anybody out of their house and sold it for property taxes. We try to work with them. But that is the big pressure, and it's going to take some adjustment in the others. So if you want to share those charts with the individual
Our
who
friends.
probably authored that, feel free. But that's just in a nutshell.
Looks like IEC probably presented this to, or send this already to interim committee. That's,
Have they?
I think so.
I think if they haven't, they're working on it.
Okay.
I
They
got.
canceled last week.
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they didn't meet. I don't
Okay.
know what.
Yeah, but I mean, they do a great job of digging in and getting the numbers. And,
How
we have
does
a lot of
the,
confidence and stuff.
the 8% cap affect your budgets? Maybe hold that thought,
Okay.
Roger. Let's see what
Yeah.
some of, how does it affect Ammon?
I'm happy to go next. I've got just 4 brief points to talk to everybody about. Let me hand this around. Roger, this is going to be familiar to you. So just kind of picking up where Roger left off, really 4 things I just wanted to leave with the two of you today and with the group. When HB 389 came out, like we do with any of the legislation in Ammon, our response is, okay, let's do it. Can do, let's make it happen. That's the direction, we'll follow through with it. But like any legislation, we always have to do the research and see what does that mean for us and what we should anticipate. If you flip to this page here, I'm going to come back to that first page with the chart on it. This page here was our analysis on how HB 389 might have a real impact on Ammon's ability to grow. What this is it shows, to the best of our ability, exactly how many housing units or commercial square feet we can build in a year before we're unable to capture that new property tax from the new growth. So basically, how much can we build until we get to that 8% maximum? And so if you look down on the bottom of this chart, there's the numbers, and those are consider those like year 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. I don't have the dates on those, but those are actually 2022, 2023, et cetera, all the way down. And so what that says is that in any given year, we could build a maximum of 256 single family homes, or 365 duplex or townhome units, or 365 multifamily units, and that's 220,000 square feet of commercial space. Those can be mixed, but those are mutually exclusive categories. And so when we did this absorption schedule, we said, okay, we might be able to work with that. And the reason is because in Ammon, we build between 200 and 230 homes, actually units per year. So that could be a mix of single family homes, townhomes, commercial units, et cetera. And we typically see about a 6% increase in our budget due to the 3% plus the growth plus annexation on an annual basis. And that's been really standard. And so we know that we've got a little bit of room there, and we could we could make it work, and we could continue to build and have no impact. But if you flip back to that first page, this is our current inventory of all of the subdivisions that are entitled in the city. Those are the ones in green, and all of the subdivisions that are in the entitlement process, those are in blue. And so if you look at the bottom of the green chart there, this is my working table that I reference on a weekly basis. We currently have 934 entitled units. And what that means is they could pull a building permit tomorrow. They could come to the counter and pay their fees and start building. In the blue side, that one is a little less specific because they have not filed a final plat. And so I've got a column for acres. That's 1,200 acres at the bottom of that blue chart that are currently in the entitlement process. And of those 1,200 acres, we know at least 4,036 lots are being proposed. So we know that, we've been able to manage within the bounds of HB 389, and we may be able to continue to do that. But if all of these units came in the next 15 to 20 years, it would be a challenge. And we would bump up against that limit. And if we bumped up against that limit, it would be my job to go to the city council and say, you know what, we've issued this many permits. We know that we're not able to capture property taxes from the new growth. You guys tell me what you want to do. And that's a discussion the council hasn't had. And I don't think they really want to have that.
Can you unissue permits?
No. Once we've issued a building permit, it's all.
So
systems go.
these are issued, these are not.
Right. Well, these are issued their entitlements. So the green have their entitlements to move forward.
Can you explain the term entitlement? for me,
Sure.
please?
Yeah, no problem. That just means that their property rights are established. And so the city council has assigned them a property right, whether that be density, type of product, commercial, residential, their zoning, and they have no other government process at all in terms of establishing what their entitlements are.
Okay.
So they are assigned a specific building land use. And if they deviate from that, then they would have to go through that entitlement process again. But as long as they stick to that land use decision, then they can file for a building permit. And the only other processes in place are the building permit process, inspections and certificates of occupancy.
So if you want to slow it down, then you don't issue that level of authority to these folks until you're prepared to make it fit within your growth pattern that makes it sustainable growth.
That's right.
Would
Yeah.
you face takings problems then? Because you would have people that qualify under the law to expand. But if you say, oh, no, Kim, you can, John, you can't,
Right.
start doing that, then you're gonna get takings lawsuits.
It's a possibility. Yeah. And like I said, in Ammon, we build between 200 and 230 units per year. We haven't exceeded that. But as you can see, it's a possibility we could. Now, these entitlements, a lot of these sit for years and years. I have a couple of subdivisions on this list that received their final plat. That means their final entitlement over 10 years ago, and they haven't moved ground at all. They could move forward anytime. And so that's why when I look at this, I take it with a grain of salt. You know what? We'll see. We'll see how things go.
That's my question, Mike. I mean, I think maybe on to Representative Horman, and that is, once they receive the approval for the entitlement subdivisions and that sits for years,
Yeah.
you can't take that back at any time and say, if you're not moving on it, once it's there, it's there forever.
That's right.
Do you have in the city impact fees?
No, we do not. And we are not particularly in favor of impact fees. And the reason for that is we have a very thought out development agreement process. And so when a development goes through Ammon, we require they do a water study, a sewer study, a traffic study, and a fiscal impact study. And based on those studies, which are all done by engineers, we will require improvements. it gets us to a similar place as impact fees, but it gives the city a lot more flexibility in working with a case-by-case development. We've looked at them, but as you know, impact fees, they're specific. And the way that we do it, we try to customize what's required for that development to make sure they pay their own way. If you flip to this page, and in fact, it's the last page. This page and the last page is the same thing. It's just, this is our levies, our levy history from 2005 to our most current levy. And when we look at the chart, the point I wanted to make here is at the beginning of the chart, you can see our levy was dropping in the boom years in the mid 2000s. And then when the economy got bad, it started to climb. And then right around 2014, 2015, we started to recover from that, and our levy has dropped ever since. And in this last year, it dropped quite a bit to the 2021 levy of 0.0017. And that was primarily due to our annexing into the fire district. And so we dropped $1 million out of our general property tax request and handed that over to the fire district. So that's that large drop. But the trend will continue as long as our growth continues. And we anticipate that we're going to see that drop for years to come. And one of our concerns is that if we do have to impose artificial limits on the number of houses and commercial square footage that we have, that we may not see that happen. We may not see that trend continue.
You've made me want to join the planning and zoning committee.
You should.
I got into this because of kids. That matters too.
So those are a couple of points I want to make. My last one was with the urban renewal side. With the closeout, what was it? Is it 90%?
Yes.
To 90%. So our feeling on that is, I believe that urban renewal areas should be closed out as quickly as possible. They should be self-defeating. They should get in. They should get the job done as quickly as possible and then be done. And I feel like that with the reduction of that value, it creates a disincentive to close districts. And I don't think anybody wants a district to stay in place when it's not necessary. And so, for example, in Ammon, we've got a district that's been in place since 1994, and it's going to close in 2024. And we're excited to close it. And we don't want that to be open one
How did that,
year longer.
it opened when in
1994.
94, it's still open, closing in 2024. I thought there was a 20-year expiration or something.
Yeah, in 2006 and 2006 to 2008, it was reduced from 24 years. First, it was unlimited, and then it was 30, and then it was 24, and now it's 20. So we're now at a 20-year maximum duration.
So that was 20.
Yeah.
We have some, but ours, we've got one that is longer than that.
Yeah, some of the older ones.
We just closed one out, didn't we, up there in Washington?
So that was just a thought from our urban renewal district. We're going to close it. We're not going to keep it open. That one has to close, but I think that created a disincentive. And I don't think anybody wants to keep urban renewal districts open any longer than we have to.
No, I think, and you're well aware that the funding for urban renewal, a lot of those monies come in towards the end of the term, if you will, of the urban renewal district. There's good players and bad players in urban renewal, and we've seen some sneak into Madison County. I think we stopped that though. Maybe that big one that they were trying to,
It's going.
but they
Make it
condensed it.
smaller.
They made it quite a bit smaller, but some of the folks across the state with urban renewal is in some of the counties are bad players, and we're all feeling it across the state because of it. But No, I agree with you. I think that once they identify the project, and once that's done, it should close out as quickly as possible. But in some of our cases, you'll see that whole list of projects that could go on for 30 years. Or
That's right.
20
Even for
years.
new projects.
That's right.
They
Well,
finished what they initially started for, and they're finding new projects to continue on.
If I read that right, though, those projects have to be included right up front. They can't add to that list.
There is flexibility, and, you know, I think agencies have done a better job recently in being specific.
Right.
But if you say, for example, if your plan says something general like, we will do improve walkability, well, you can improve walkability
A lot different.
a lot of
ways.
different ways,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're right.
So, and I think that's what happens.
So can I?
Yes,
touch on it a little
Roger.
bit Just real quick.
And I want to hear from these
Yeah,
folks.
because I think, you know, you being from the county, know the county concerns. It increases the services that are required here, takes the value off of our books and spreads it to the other taxpayers. So when one of those are created, it's basically shifting it. The money goes to specific projects, you know, in Rexburg or wherever you're looking at, and they benefit from it. But we're required to provide the courts a whole list of these services, and it takes away that value and that tax revenue from the county.
Let me ask a question, and I honestly don't know the answer, but I was thinking, the growth that happens within a county or a city, say it's 20%, does the service level follow that? Does the service need to increase 20%?
No,
Emergency services, water and sewer. You see what I'm saying? What's the,
yeah, so for the chart that you saw there on the limit on the growth, that only takes into account the costs that growth imposes on the services that are property tax based or supported by liquor tax or state revenue sharing. Those other services, water and sewer, they are not showing up on that at all. And that's because those are all fee based. And so with the water, sewer, sanitation, that's completely covered within the fee. And so these growth limits only have to do with your general services, your planning department, city clerk, engineers, law enforcement, parks. Yeah, those areas.
I think what we see is that when the growth rate is faster than the revenue rate, it creates pressure on public safety. So for right now, we have more calls than we have officers to fill. We can't hire them fast enough because we don't have the money to do it. And so, which means then now the city's looking at what services can we cut to provide the essential services of public safety.
But then we also have residents that have an appetite for more green space, parks, activities, things of that nature. So they kind of in a way are in a competition, if you will, with public safety. So that makes it really challenging. At least for our city.
so the ARPA funds that come in, what are you seeing some of the cities or what are you using those funds for?
It's not really good for ongoing costs. We're looking at the capital requests.
So
Madison.
did we buy an ambulance? I
Two
can't
of them.
remember. Two of them from the ARPA.
Oh, not from ARPA. No, that COVID bought one of them.
CARES.
The
Yeah.
CARES.
Cares.
CARES, okay.
And we're pretty particular about making a recommendation that not using one-time money for an ongoing expense. So for example, if a department wants to come forward and build a new rec center, let's just use that. If we have to have that conversation, how are you going to come up with the funds to maintain it on an ongoing basis? That's why the ARPA money isn't really useful for anything that may have an ongoing commitment
Yeah, programs.
beyond the program.
So ARPA funds are very restricted, mostly water, sewer, broadband is what they're, some infrastructure, but it's pretty specific.
So we can't use it like the state did that public safety. Hey, if you'll use these COVID dollars for public safety this year, keep your levy flat.
Yeah.
Nobody's considering anything like that this year.
Can't do that.
You can't do it.
You can't do it with
It
this round.
specifically says you cannot replace property tax.
So we're using it on water projects, sewer projects. And we're putting, I think we have 3.86 million in ARPA, if I remember right, and half of that's going to our sewer project and the other half's going to water.
Which is already supported by fees. It
Which
makes
is
no
already
sense.
supported by fees.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So,
Well, not to mention prior years, we knew we were a growing community and had already implemented some of those infrastructure expansion and improvements many years ago.
Mhm.
So
in Idaho Falls, the 8% cap, are you guys bumping up against that? Or
we've hit that a couple times in the past couple years. This year, we're still not this year. But it has over the last 30 years, it's depressing. What it's doing is it's going to depress our ability to levy. And so going forward, it might be a short-term gain for property owners, but it's a long-term loss for the city because it's going to depress the revenue stream. So now we have to come up with other ways to raise funds.
What are your thoughts on this, Mike?
I come from different
Okay.
areas.
Yeah.
Idaho has cheap property taxes. It's an issue, but I know for locals here, it's an issue. But other states have other ways to raise revenues. You go to the East Coast, towns have property taxes, income taxes. West Coast, you have local option sales tax.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about local option tax.
That is the easiest way, but there is a problem with local options, is that during the economy, if there's a recession, it'll impact local government.
Right.
The best way is to have a blended mix. You want to diversify your income stream. And you would want to have some property taxes, some local option sales tax.
the hybrid approach is really important because actually I came from a city that solely relied on sales tax. And so what happened when our neighboring communities would build out things that were a little bit nicer, a little bit more upgraded, if you will, people from the community were going to those outside areas and spending their sales tax over there instead of in the community because they had newer, shinier, more interesting types of things. And so that's a challenge for some of the communities that are located next to each other when you just solely rely on sales tax. So that's why the blended hybrid approach would be something to consider.
Can I ask for more context around the comment you made? In the short term, it's good for property owners,
Because they're
but in
seeing
the long term, it's not good for city revenue streams. Can you?
The reason why it's not good long term is that you increase your property tax on a percentage basis. So it's 3% of the previous levy is your statutory allowable. Well, if you're decreasing what you're levy the previous year, you lose out on the compounding effect each year. And so if I went back and recalculated, hey, if we did this in 1980, what would our revenue stream be today? It's about $6 million less. And so that would be really, in my opinion, detrimental to the city's success, particularly areas of public safety and parks.
In particular areas of growth as well. It really just kind of limits that.
Thank you.
I can't remember Representative Scogg's property tax bill.
Yeah. I'll
You
pull it up.
remember the?
But, you mentioned the local option tax, and that's something that we've been interested in, and we like it because it gives the public the choice. And you can put in your local option tax ballot what you want them to tax, how, which ones. When I worked in the cities of Haley and Ketchum, we had a local option tax. And the residents in Haley said, we're okay if you put a tax on booze, car rentals, and hotel rooms, but we're not okay with anything else. And that got passed. And in Ketchum, the voters up there said, not tax all, including lumber that comes into town. That was a challenge. But it was a choice from the community, and it had to have, I can't remember what the majority of the vote is, if it's a simple or a super majority. But it had to go back to the voters every few years for renewal, and for them to basically, say, yes, we're okay with this.
No, I'm visiting with one of the legislators that was there to say, hey, if city or county wants, whatever in their city, county, they go to the voters and ask them for an improved tax on it or a bond or whatever it is. And I can see, I guess, his reasoning on that, but folks that are in the seat know, running a city and county that way is pretty difficult to keep up with demands, if you will. If you had to run to the voters every time we wanted something or needed something, it'd be difficult. But yet on his side, on the legislator's side, he says, hey, if it's really a need, then sell it and get it going.
I'll give you an
Can't find
example of one
Scott's bill.
that didn't work well. Fremont County is primarily residential. We don't have a lot of commercial.
Right.
We have lots of homes. We're the playground. So we do a lot of public safety in Fremont County. Our ambulance is stretched to the max. And we tried to do a permanent override 2 times. It failed. We got a temporary override for the next 2 years. But we need ongoing revenue sources for that ambulance. We pay them a stipend for being on call, and then when they are on a run, they get an hourly rate. These people are pretty much volunteering.
Yeah.
It's not, we
Yeah.
can't sustain it, and we can't go full time. If we maxed out our ability, our levying ability, we would not have enough to put full-time EMTs on,
Even if you ran your max.
even if we max. And yet the people need that service. And so we are different in Fremont County than everybody sitting here. You're talking about local option tax. Local option tax isn't going to help our
that's
county
right.
at all.
Is there a way to carve out just emergency services and have a different funding formula or,
But this is where
levy
one,
rates?
you want to look outside the box. We're trying to look at one problem and say, how can we solve the problem the same way we've always solved it? We need other solutions. You look outside the box.
'Cause
not-
it seems like, if I hear you right, emergency services is really the crux on this whole thing. I mean, it all points back to how do we protect our people, life and property. And
That goes back to the mandates, and it impacts counties a lot worse than others because part of those public services, you add a police officer, you get more arrests, you fill the courts, you fill the jails, and there's a limit to that. This idea of the balance, it might be time to take a look at the bigger picture. Putting a limit on property tax, I think 5 to 6%, and that's just one revenue source, is not unreasonable from the property tax. But you've got to look at the other sources, one of which is the revenue sharing adjustment, because anytime there's been a change to the revenue sharing, seems like the state takes the majority of it, and we end up on the short end. And to be able to fund those services, I think long-term to accomplish that balance in the 3-legged stool or whatever, you've got to take a look at other ways, to come up with that revenue. Revenue sharing is one of them. You guys are sitting on a huge surplus.
Which, by the way, I talked to Paul Headley Monday. They're estimating about 900 million of that is one time. They're estimating the other 600-ish million is ongoing. But no economist yet that they have found has been able to determine what percentage of that is related to one-time stimulus
Right.
activity.
And
And
that's
so-
difficult for us too.
600 is not necessarily an ongoing surplus that we should be dedicating to ongoing costs.
Well, but the one, you know, I think if you've got those in, what the IEC gave you was, for example, you call it the Wayfair portion of that. That
Yeah.
just went into the, you know, that's one place that IEC argued should have gone into the formula because, you know, those sales, those are sales. And they're taking away from the bricks and mortar stores. And they should go into that formula. I don't know what some of the other entities, but you know, that extra 400,000 this year would have helped us replace the 300,000 that we had to fund the health district with. You know, so you keep picking too many places, which before we're done, I'd like to talk about the idea you came up with on reserves. Because I think that's not a good idea.
And can I give a good example of why not capping reserves is a scary thing? Can I just say, Dave, how do you fund that if you don't have some reserves? If you limit our reserves to 3%, 3 months, there's no way we can fund a murder trial.
Yeah, I
When
don't
are we
think I
cap-
said that, though. I don't think I said cap it. I said that was some of the concerns.
It is.
Right.
The reserves that some of, I think Ada County has like 50 million bucks in reserves.
Yeah.
And that gives heartburn to some legislators.
There's a
uh,
city, actually.
Or the city.
Who determines what a healthy reserve is?
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
you know, when I came into office, there, Madison County had nothing. There was
Right.
no reserve, and that was scary. You've got bridges that could go out. I mean, there's so many things, murder cases, and we could have 3 this year.
Here's some kind of basic guidelines from budgeting that we go by. You know, we think you need to have 9 months of operational reserves yet, which we've worked hard to get to. Partly because you're probably 4 to 4.5 months. And you know that that goes down because we collect property taxes. There are other sources of revenue twice a year. So, you know, if you're operating on a 3-month reserve, you might get to a point where you can't pay your bills for a while and put them out. So it kind of flattens that out because the other entities know that, you know, our tax collections come in and you get a big bump. We feel like 9 months is safe, but we've always operated for, how many years have I been here, Abby?
Just a couple.
Yeah, but we've operated for many years on the idea that we have built into our base budget to set money aside for projects.
Yeah.
Some of these we've been setting aside for 10 or 15 years. Expansion, as we grow, we've taken the approach that we save it up, we pay cash.
The jail.
We've gone the jail. We've done that with the jail. We've done that with office space downtown because when the economy was slow, we picked up space for driver's license, motor vehicles. We're getting a new elections office. We're doing that with the ARPA funds, by the way, which helped. But we've also been setting aside, because you talk about impact fees, when a city, for example, approves a bunch of these, it's putting an impact on the county roads. And so far, we haven't been successful getting the cities to, no offense, but to make the developers annex the road, make the developers improve the road. So for example, we've been saving the money. We're doing like hopefully 4 miles of projects out there around Thunder Ridge. You know, the voters vote for a new school, growth comes in, puts the impact on there. If you come in and chop off the reserves and say you got to turn those back, you know, I mean, we're finally to the point where we're going to probably have 7 or 8 miles of road improved there in the next 2 or 3 years, which is the real choke point. So be cautious on limiting the reserves.
Yeah.
Because
Well, yeah.
there are other
Let me
things,
be
the murder
very clear.
cases.
I did not say that.
Yeah,
No.
right, but we're just saying, you
But
know,
But that was part of the,
I know the
the rub.
interim committee is looking very hard at that right now.
How do you-
I've been listening to.
Yeah.
how do you
Addis is
set
ticked over
reserves
this Boise.
based- No one's the same. We're all different.
We are, we all
Yeah.
So
have
how do you
different
compare
needs.
one reserve to another? We have an electrical utility. How do you compare us with someone who doesn't?
So let's say he and I lose that conversation. Would the best way to do it be to index it based on your size?
Well, again, though,
Services offered,
I mean,
different
it's-
services offered.
It
we
depends
have
on
a-
your services.
and we have a reserve for our water system that's based on the requirements of that water system, number of pumps, lane, miles of pipe. We have a reserve for the sewer system, we have a reserve for our sanitation, so all of those are based on the components that are specific to that system. So I don't know how you would put a limit on that, because everybody's system is entirely unique to their city. Most of our reserves are absolutely dependent on the enterprise funds. We don't have a whole lot of reserves for general, not like counties.
But aren't you talking,
mandates.
aren't you talking about reserves for property taxes?
I'm talking about,
I mean, isn't that what the interim committee is talking about?
I don't know, I have not listened, but I have talked to Representative Addis multiple times. And if they're talking about it,
I
like
think
you
it's
say,
in
it's
general.
making me real nervous.
It's-
And so I'm
it's more in
trying to
general
pivot
than
of how we
property
can
tax.
lean on them with good data and arguments that, if you go down this road and you want our votes, you will do X. That's the bargaining position we're in. And so I don't know how serious they are about it. I know he is ticked about it, the Boise Reserve specifically. I don't know enough about city budgets. I know the generally accepted government accounting standards in schools and how we had to designate our reserves, and we had two categories. I don't know if that applies to cities and counties.
That's a point that has been discussed that could be workable, because you say Ada County's got $50 million. We have no idea. I think it would be acceptable to have those outlined on our 5 and 10-year plans, what we're setting money aside for, and so that we can show that. If you've got $50 million, which would be awful nice, you can say 10 million of that goes to the road in front of Representative Horman's house. No,
I
but-
just take fiber. Thank you. I'm kidding. I just signed up for
Yeah,
T-Mobile. I'm good.
But have it so that they can, that's a transparency thing, which I don't think is a problem with us. Show what you're saving for and what you're planning on it. But then if there's an objection to us saving it for roads,
Yeah.
which is another issue of finding ways to get more road funding with the state, it seems like they always take the 60% and make us split the 40%.
That's a really good.
And that's the other.
You'll be in the committee. I won't.
That's right.
I only have my vote on the floor.
Is roads.
And that's one of the things that we're doing, we have our public hearings, we're very clear, if we are levying, we specifically state in the public hearing, these are the things that we are going to be doing with this money, which is a departure, I think, from, history.
Schools. too.
And just being very clear and very transparent, very upfront. We also put those public hearing documents on the website, so if a resident isn't able to come to the meeting, they can actually go on our website and see, oh, they're gonna be building this, or they're gonna be, installing that. And that way it's very clear of what we're gonna be using the money for.
I'm actually working on a bill, this is a little bit of a parking lot issue around that same issue on supplemental levies for schools. Because I voted no once when our district requested a supplemental levy, because they would not tell me what they were gonna spend it on.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't expect me to vote yes as a board member then. They learned their lesson, but I had to vote no on the first one I ever was put in front of me. And I do believe if we could get, I'm still fleshing out the language, just what you're doing, that declaration of, look, this levy's going for X, full day kindergarten, additional salaries, increased healthcare benefits, whatever it is. So the voters do have the opportunity, because they're spending it on something that the state's not funding. And if it's full day kindergarten, great. If that's important to your community, do it, go for it. But at least disclose. And right now in schools, it all goes into the same pot by and large, and you can't distinguish what is local spending and what is state spending.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I am working on that idea for supplementals, because I think at a minimum, it just helps voters know what what they're voting on or paying for.
Well, we take the heat on transparency all the time. It's like, hey, you guys aren't upfront with this, which I'm curious, out of your budget hearings, do you get community participation and they show up or?
It's less and less each year to the point where it's non-existent.
We
Yeah,
normally
don't
have zero,
any.
but I had 3 this year, and this is what their problem was that they're concerned with. There's about every 5 years, we get a group in Island Park that's angry at the county over many things. And this year it is short-term rentals. I think everybody in Island Park who has a cabin is doing short-term rental on it. And we do have an ordinance in place, but we do not have the manpower to enforce it. And they're angry, they're calling the sheriff's office. They go out and it's not even a rental, it's family. You know, a friend that they've let into their place, and it's very frustrating. So again, those essential services that everybody wants, we cannot, we have 2 deputies on in Fremont County at any given time, 2.
And how many have you seen coming down here today?
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Chuck, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free Rexburg. Oh, I thought I worked.
Six,
at
six,
that.
six.
So we thought we were number.
Okay, and Penny, anything on your side?
Well,
Yeah.
you did ask about the 8% cap. This year, the way the budget was set up, we didn't have anybody, I would say even come close, maybe 1 district was all. Because of the way they limited new construction and that, there was not even an option to get close to that 8%. So if that 8% is actually the goal, then maybe there doesn't need to be so many details in the formula and just say 8% cap, rather than, it was really difficult for clerks this year to go back to last year's stuff to pull this information, this year's stuff to pull this information, balance this hypothetical levy rate with last year's levy rate. So it just became very complicated.
And trying to.
Get rid of the hypothetical and get rid of 90%, just have the 8%.
That's a
Yeah,
very
so
good point.
when
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, guys, here's another change.
And then to pass that on to taxing districts
To teach
And-
them.
and have them understand all of this
They
when
don't.
we're barely getting
Yeah,
it and
I-
the state's barely getting it.
So I wasn't sure what the overall end result wanted to be. If you wanted to limit it to 8%, you went way above and beyond. Does that make sense? But if the 8% was just a side note, then I understand why the hypothetical levy rate came into play, because we were more around, I would say, 3 to 5% for the majority of taxing districts was what they were limited to. The other thing is with the limit on foregone, I don't have a problem with that. Except that it's a reserve that communities have been conservative in saving that so that they could do projects. And now all of a sudden they've got that money sitting there that they can't use. It's like you're telling us not to reserve funds in the county, which we've always had, well, Roger made it so that we have a reserve. And so now we're looking at those projects. We're looking at, oh, these roads need to be done. Let's use the money for that. It's not like we're trying to overtax the people, but we're trying to not charge them interest on a bond or interest on a levy. And so that's the big thing, is when we've saved money, give us the opportunity to be smart at using that money and don't tie everybody's hands. Does that make sense?
So are you saying that foregone is in a manner considered a reserve then?
Kind of. Would you guys
People
say
looked at
that?
it that way.
Yep.
So some look at it that way, some of us don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because our reserves, we set aside reserves.
Just cash.
Foregone is money you could have collected and didn't. Having some type of a meter on the way out, I don't think is unreasonable. Because you could see if somebody came in and took all their foregone, the change that you have to designate where it goes. 2 years ago, we took a pretty good chunk of foregone. But it was to bring our pay scale up on our law enforcement and fund public safety. But you have to spell that out and bring it up in your budget hearing.
The only thing we ever use foregone for, and I don't know about you guys, but because they have a substantial foregone as well, is when there are ongoing costs that we have that we don't know how we're going to provide it in the levy we currently have. Any of our reserves are used for one-time projects. We can't use those reserves for ongoing because that would just deplete the reserves.
But you can use like the 1% of the foregone for ongoing. And that kind of, if you're looking at the 5% increase of money, that allows you that little extra to build in your base slowly, so you don't have a big shock to the
But that works
taxpayer.
really good for a Bonneville County. We don't have any foregone amount in Fremont County. We need everything we've got just to keep going. We don't have that luxury to be able to build a foregone. I've been clerk 21 years. We had foregone 1 year, and the next year they took it. We just have not had the abilities because the demands are there.
That goes back again to this and the amount of money that counties can collect.
Yeah.
And you need to take a look at the other sources of revenue to fund these mandated services.
And it's hard. We're the only county in the state that operates a sewer system. I'd love to have your size sewer systems. We have 46 lift stations in Island Park.
Oh, my gosh. That sounds like a nightmare. Gosh.
And we're looking now at mechanical plants. We have 2 sewer plants, and we're looking, they gave us a bid for the 2 of 16 million. We don't qualify for any federal assistance because the per capita income is too high. So we have to do it all through fees. And we thought we were doing so good. We'd saved $6 million towards this project. And they come back and said 16. I just went,
Jeez.
really?
Can I just ask one
Sure.
We need to.
more question?
I need to leave, but-
Would you say that the variation that we're hearing here in this small gathering is typical statewide?
Yes,
That we're gonna have the extreme of this to this and this to this? It's representative of a statewide conversation?
yes.
Okay.
Because you look at the areas that have the growth happening, like you do here in Bonneville County. And then you look at, we've got the growth happening, but it's second homes. It's not full-time residents. And then we get the angry people who have the second home that say, I pay for everything and I get nothing. And their frustration. And, where do you draw the line? It's very difficult. And, I pay for schools and I don't even have children in your school systems and those kinds of things that go on. It's very difficult when it seems like so many times, and I'm not picking on you two, but so many times the legislature looks at Ada County and says that's happening statewide, and it isn't.
Okay.
Well,
Very
Valley
helpful,
Valley
thank you.
County is a prime example. They said they have 90% second homes.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they even function.
We were comparing issues this week with Valley
Right.
County, and it's frustrating, but we need to leave, but I.
Hey, thank you very much. And I
Can
think,
I just make one
Great,
comment
yes.
on this? The thing conversation early on, the diversity of the way we get our money is so important. I feel like that the property taxes hit the homeowners. And so when we talk about the possibility of revenue sharing and dividing that so that it hits a broader spectrum of people through the community, I don't know if there's other ways. You guys probably know better than I do, other ways of sources rather than hitting the homeowners. And so that would be something in the perfect world.
We can all cover our deficits if we took John's play money out of
there you
his
go.
budget and funded our, because he's that well off.
no.
I know.
I think
Not
what I'd
happening.
like to say is just the bill itself was too restrictive in the fact that instead of just saying, here's the general principle we want the cities to operate in, we're gonna do growth, foregone. They went through everything. It's like, well, that's not how you help people. You give them the rules you want them to operate in, not go through and tell them every aspect of what to do.
And then make sure that the state tax commission understands it, because they had to learn from our clerks. And then the information we had to give to the other entities was wrong.
I called them one time and they said, just ask your attorney because we don't know which way it's gonna go.
Yeah.
Well, and they used IAC to help with
Yeah.
formulas because they couldn't figure it out. so.
Well, and then it didn't help us, they rushed it back to January 1.
Mhm.
It didn't do that, so that made it, most of the time, the legislation begins like July. But
Time to
then
figure
they
it out.
retroed it back, so then it made it even more confusing.
Well, we didn't have the decision of the legislature as soon as we normally do
Well,
either,
that-
and that threw them behind.
Yeah,
Yeah, let
that's
me
true.
add one more
May.
complication that you've thrown in there with the homeowner's exemption, being able to apply for that any month. We've seen in the 2 months, I can't remember what Blake said, $20 million worth of value that normally they've set at the budget level. And so when we have to distribute that, it comes out of the next month. I think, and we don't know what's going to happen because they can apply for those homeowners exemption anytime after the budgets are set. So if you budgeted for a certain amount, be prepared for there to be offsets on that, and it'll come in lower because the treasurer just sends it out in a formula on what's collected. And now if somebody applies for the homeowner's exemption, they can do it on December 31st and get it for the whole year back, that tax year.
Okay, one last thing, shall we? The information from county assessors, new construction role to the cities and budgeting, there's either somewhat of a disconnect or the numbers aren't being reported remotely correct. There's been huge differences in what this assessor is reporting versus what's the reality. How do we fix that? It seems like, look this up. It says that it says new construction as soon as possible or the first Monday in June. The assessor certifies that to the clerk in each taxing district. Are you following me there? How do we fix that? Or is
You're finding numbers incorrect?
what's being reported? I think the city of Idaho Falls ran into an issue with that.
Well, so we ran our building permits based on occupancy when they were certified. This is our first year getting into understanding new construction. And so we wanted to say, okay, here's the buildings that were issued occupancy during 2020. How does that compare to the county? They weren't even close. But when I talked to the assessor, they're trying to get the information, but they're not exactly sure. I haven't been able to get the information. I talked to Denise, and
She is new.
she's
as
new.
well.
I get that. I'm not being
Yeah.
critical of her.
Yeah.
She gives us,
doesn't-
okay, now this is close, but this is not what we're looking for. And so we're working through that process, but there is a disconnect. We're gonna get it until August, and we're supposed to certify in September. And so,
We had a problem with that phase.
yeah.
But
I know, being critical. We understand that there was issues
But
this
I
year.
think this is an issue that's happening across the state, between counties and cities, getting that correct information on new construction for budgeting purposes. The clerks start your budgeting, what, in May, April?
Yeah, April.
April. And, the fiscal year starts October 1, well, you're 6 months of budgeting, which is crazy when you think about it, because it seems you just start your budget, you go through the holidays and you get into a new year and you're like, now you're talking budget again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Wait, you
it's
guys
that
run on
crazy.
an October 1 fiscal
Yeah.
year?
That follows the state, yeah. School districts are on June 30th.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Cities and counties are 9/30.
And states on June or July and feds are on October.
I'm just
didn't realize
curious if, from a legislator side of things, if there's legislation that needs to be cleaned up, if it needs to be, I know we say we shouldn't be so, so direct on some of our requests, but yeah, in
So
something
do you
like
know if
this.
that was a problem more this year, because the assessors did deal with the 90% construction as well as the change in
And
the
it could
law
be,
as
Penny,
far
I,
as when they can start counting new construction.
Right.
that
And so
could be.
that was a change as well.
I just
this year.
heard more about it this year, so
Well,
maybe that's the case.
And it would be uncomfortable, but you could back up the deadline earlier in the year for new construction, and then anything after that goes into next year.
Yeah.
most of the entities want to take advantage of the. new
So say that
construction.
again.
Well,
For
Back it
example,
up.
it's June or
You,
something.
you said the time period, new constructions from January to December, and then if it's
Oh.
reported the next year or
Right.
whatever.
That'd
What,
make it-
can someone explain it to me now? Like, when's your deadline?
Well, we get the final numbers from the assessor. Actually, they're supposed to give them to us July 31st.
And you could have them
So
give
we
the
are well
final
into our-
numbers at an
And when I
earlier date. not
talking
carry
to
those
the
over
assessor,
till
they said
next
they
year.
ran into, well, they should get everything entered, so they just cut it off.
And,
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
probably coming
and
from entities.
there's-
So when do we
that
get our
have
new
the
construction
construction
numbers?
they
'Cause that's
can,
the final
so they
June
get taxes
June
now.
1st.
Yeah, for the third
Gotcha.
Monday in
Like, you
June,
gotta
is that
run.
what it
Okay,
is?
thank you.
They
That's why.
gotta-
They were
Thanks for
still-
letting us use
My
your.
state, my
Oh,
county was
it
still
works out
struggling.
well.
Yeah,
August.
this has
Yeah,
been
We
really
were
helpful.
too,
Okay.
but you know, another thing we need to talk about sometimes is they have the clerk sign off on that, on the assessors. We don't do that. And we don't know the numbers, but yet they ask us to sign off on it.
Well, it's just, yeah, asking questions, and they're like,
Well-
well, I'm not really sure, and I'm like,
Yeah,
a little
the-
uncomfortable.
That's the
I was
assessors.
pushing really hard this year. I'm sorry.
No, you guys are great, I mean, but
Oh.
these are good conversations to
They
have,
are.
so we
They
all
are so
understand.
good.
Thanks, Roger.
Because you talk to them, no one really understands how it's
Hey, Roger,
good.
thank you. It's good to
all
see
together,
you.
it's little pieces.
Well, and they did change the legislation this year, so it was done on a different basis, including the 90%, so they had to, and that's why I was curious if this was just this year or if previous years.
Yeah.
That's been the
I
same
think it's
issue.
more,
So let's ask Keith then, when he's done with redistricting, to just give us a visual timeline. Like, just tell us how it was before, what it looks like now, and maybe that's one small piece.
And that would be helpful if we had answers, because we were on the hot seat a number of occasions and we were trying to be so diplomatic, but of course, our budget sessions are videoed and they're live. And so we're trying to be very diplomatic and saying, well, but it would be nice to have some milestones or some guideposts, if you will.
okay,
And we can bring that back
Thank
to
you
you
very
and say,
much.
you tell us a date.
yeah. If there's things that pop in your mind, please reach out to us, let us know, or email us, call us, but
I think one of the things other is that you passed the bill so late and so quickly.
Yeah.
There
Well,
wasn't enough
yeah.
review. I mean, there was lots of review because it
I
kept
agree.
changing the iteration.
and
I'm tired of that
we
game.
agree. The process was not right the way that went through.
I think your job is hard.
It
as
is
well.
hard.
So we appreciate you
Yeah.
trying to understand
Trying
what
to-
we're going through, but we don't understand.
But we were like,
Thanks
Trying
for
to-
being
Taking
there
the time.
and asking the
Thank you.
questions.
Yeah, this is helpful.
You've got my,
Yes,
you can
I
get
have
my
the
contact information
you
now.
do.
Okay. Yeah, don't hesitate to just reach out and say,
Hey, this is fun. We should do more often.
Yeah, I do apologize to all you guys. This year was a mess in our.
No, you're great.
We're
Hey, no
trying to get
complaints.
I don't think I've ever met you.